Hey, yo, it's me, Pops Van Marmalade, and you're watching the Comics-Related Madness Network. Huh? So come get some. CromCon. CromCon.
Madness Entertainment Group presents the Madness Comic Network with original programming and additional comic-related content.
Hey, we want to shout out to our sponsors, Daytona Beach Comic Con. If you are a fan of comic books, if you're a fan of comic book conventions, and if you like meeting comic book creators and getting comics and comic-related stuff, then you need to make your plans to attend Daytona Beach Comic Con. This year's show is September 7th and 8th. Silverline will be there, so you should make your plans to be there too. We'll see you there. If you like comics and find yourself in the Orlando, Florida area, doesn't everyone come to Orlando at some point in time to see the House of Mouse? But when you're here, you need to make it a point to visit Coliseum of Comics, especially the one on East Colonial Drive. They carry Silverline Comics, even a limited edition Coliseum of Comics version of our comics. So, when you go, be sure to ask for Silverline Comics and tell them we sent you. OCD stands for Orlando Collector Deviants. OCD, Steve and Trish, they're a family of geeks who promote geek things, particularly those around the Orlando, Florida area. They're big supporters of Silverline, and we think you should be supporters of theirs too. Go give them some love. If you are an independent comic book maker and you need to get your independent comics made, you need to look no further than Kablam Digital Printing. They print our books, and they do a bang-up job. They're not only trusted by Silverline, but many, many independent comic book makers. Head on over to kablam.com and see for yourself just how easy it is to have your comic printed by them. And tell them Silverline sent you.
Hi, this is Tim TK, host of That Silverline Show on Tuesday. Join us at 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific every Tuesday night as we discuss pop culture and the joys of making comics.
Hi, I'm Barb Kilber, co-host of Silverline's Wednesday Wham. Join us each Wednesday nights as we discuss comics, literature, movies, and anything else that may catch our attention.
I'm Roland Mann, and I host Silverline's Silver Sunday. Join me every Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern as we make mine Silverline.
Creating beyond calculation, beyond politics, beyond the big two. Welcome, Silverliners, to the wonderful world of Wednesday Wham! We've got our core crew here tonight, with the exception of the Empress of the Inks. Alas, she couldn't make it this evening. But we do have a special show. I'm Dean Zachary, your host, and we are joined by one of the wizards of wordplay, Rory Boyle. We have the Paragon of Pencils, Rob Davis, and a special show tonight because we are focusing on the superior skeptic himself and his skills with coloring. Yes, Aaron Humphreys will be guiding us tonight and really talking us through his coloring process. He does a fantastic job on Godlings, and he's going to show us how he does it. Before we get started, if you could just, Aaron, just tell us what tools you're using first so that folks kind of understand the gear.
What are your favorite
and then
crayons?
Yeah. You know, all the crayons and the construction paper and
all
the paste.
64, yep.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, of course. Well, I mean, you make sure you buy the crayon with the sharpener, built-in sharpener.
Yeah,
That's important.
Exactly. That's why it's got to be 64. Yeah.
It's got to be the 64 one. And then you can use the individual little boxes in the 64 as your impromptu missile launchers when you try to shoot your crayons at your friends. And did anyone else do this?
Oh yeah.
Nope.
And don't try to eat them. Don't try to eat them all at once. You know, just take it easy. But
everybody knows they did this. Everyone's like, "Oh, look, a missile launcher," and so that was
right.
That was always the case.
Mm-hmm. So what do you use? What do you like to use as far as your gear? No, your gear.
I've
devices.
Used, it's funny. I've used a Wacom tablet for a long time. I recently got a Cintiq because I've been doing that.
Okay.
I've been coloring with the Wacom. I can color with the Wacom. I just can't draw with it. That's weird to say, but it's kind of true in a way.
I've had the same problem.
Yeah, and so I think I was too fussy on my lines or whatever. But I recently got a Cintiq, so I've just been doing that. I can draw on the computer and color, and I'm still even drawing. I set my pictures at 11 by 17. I can print them. I can sell these as prints. And then I realized, well, crap, if I blow them up 11 by 17, the line work doesn't look as good. That's the thing that's just starting to kill me about the computers. You focus in on the line work and you see what lines are missing and that things aren't filled in, and it's like
sure.
So we will
pixelation
see. It's not so much pixelation,
it's the texture of the paper a lot of times if you're drawing
so
analog
it's
style.
Like I'll show you when I get, because I think I can show it on this one. I zoom in. That's the best way to show it.
Now, do you draw, before we get started, do you draw traditionally, scan it into the device and bring it into a program?
I do. It depends. Right now I'm able to draw on the computer, but before I draw by pencil, I would ink it by hand, and then I would photocopy it at Kinko's. I'd shrink it down, photocopy, because my scanner bed's only very small. And then I'd scan it into the computer and then just save it as a Photoshop file, work from there. Yeah. Now I could do it all digitally. I'm still not completely, there's still some other stuff I have to work around digital. Again, it's that, and I'll show you some of the, like they tell you, like the golden rule, don't magnify your artwork when you're drawing on it. Because then it just, your OCD kicks in, you got to fix everything. And you don't do that with an inked picture. I mean, if you're inking 11 by 17, what you see is what it looks like. So, but yeah, and then I color it in Photoshop. I know you can color in clip art, and I thought about working on doing that, but I'm so used to Photoshop that it's just easier for me to save it as a Photoshop file and go there.
Well, that's good too, because that's probably the software that the application that most people are familiar with anyway. So they're familiar with layers. Most people have at least encountered it if they're interested in digitally producing their own comic books. They kind of understand the basics of Photoshop. Well, bring up a black and white and walk us through, Aaron. And once you do, I will go full screen and we'll take questions and I'll throw some out there, and just go for it, man.
This is the screen. And so this is what I mean. Like, it looks good here, but this image is supposed to be 11 by 17. So if they were actually see it regular size, you start to see a little bit where the lines don't match up. And if you go further in, and that just has to do with, it's like, again, you don't magnify it because, you pull it out, the more you pull it out, the better looking it gets.
Sure.
Because your eyes don't pick up on those little. So I don't know. So I'm thinking I may have to just color one of these, print 11 by 17 and see how bad it looks, because I don't really want to, like, what's 11 by 17, so I have to go in and like repair all of this. I don't really want to do that.
What needs repair? Because I have an untrained eye, so I don't see any problems with it. Where specifically are you guys looking?
I think a lot of it is, Aaron, that as the artists, we focus on the imperfections of our own work.
Yeah.
Right.
And a lot of times the viewer and the reader, they are so, entranced by the art itself that
they're not going to notice it.
They're not going to notice. I wouldn't worry too much about it. The key here is find a comfortable size as you're in production mode, which you are.
Yeah.
You scan it in. You can zoom in and out as you're doing. Now, there's your base layer, right? Your base layer
this is
your
my
line
base
art.
layer, and I put a gray. Somebody taught me a while ago that instead of coloring with white, you can actually color with gray.
You can use any
easier
color
on the eyes. And so, and this is just like, I put in the flat colors of him, and I already have this done, so I'm just turning on layers.
Sure.
As you see fit. And of course, the idea is, like, you want to eventually, for him, you get to the point you turn on shadows. and then it totally changes it. And then you put on his light, which would be his highlights. And there's some other lights too I did around that. I kind of combined layers. But like you take that away and then you see how flat he looks.
Right. Well, let's start at the beginning. When someone starts in, they're like, I want to color my artwork. They've got a black and white piece. The first thing you want to do is create a layer that's underneath the line art, but you have to make the line art transparent. So that's multiply, right?
Yeah,
okay.
You want to put it on multiply, and these are your layer options,
right?
And you can do all sorts of and just for fun, I'll show you the different ways these like. Let me see if they get okay. Like so, this is dissolve, and you see as I just go down the list how different layers will actually affect your art.
Yes.
And so this is all stuff you can do and like overlay and lighten it. And then of course you get in there. I mean, you get some crazy stuff like differences. Right. Yeah. And so, but you just put on normal for the colors. This one you want on multiply your line art.
Okay. So line art's on multiply. You were saying to comfort the eye, you may want to throw a gray background underneath that.
Yeah.
So it's not so stark.
Right. Yeah. It kind of adds like a little bit. You see how it's a little easier.
Yes.
It's not such a stark white. It kind of. Sure. I an art teacher, and I didn't do that for a while, and I started because I was so used to I didn't do it, and I started doing it for a while, and I'm like, oh, okay. And I just picked like a gray from like one of the grayscale swatches. Sure. It doesn't have to be big, but something to kind of help lessen it.
Now I've seen people approach coloring many different ways. The two most common ways I've noticed as I watch colors and as I've colored myself is some people do select and fill. Some people literally like to scrub in or shade in or paint in the color. Now, which one do you like? Do you use both? And does it depend on what you're coloring?
I like to color it in. And the reason I like to color it in is because a lot of times if you use fill, it sometimes leaves a white line, like a thin white line between
or a lighter line of the color. Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
And a lot of times you also want to color underneath the line art. This actually, because you'll see it. But and also coloring is also kind of like hypnotic. So it's just like relaxing. It's just sit down and color. But yeah, I hand color all that in just because it's kind of part of the fun process. You can go back and fill it in, but I don't know. I do that sometimes. I mean, it's quicker, but then again, I'm not necessarily in this to be quick.
So you're working in layers, and your colors have to be underneath the inked work. So you do that.
Yes.
You do that how? Because that sounds like you're using a different process than I use.
Yeah, it's multiply and then right underneath. So like if this is the color. So if I actually take the color and put it over the lines, like above the layer, that's what it looks like. So
see,
below the line layer.
Below the line layer, because the line is the ink that holds everything. So
right.
You want to color. Some people do it different ways. Like if they do fills, a lot of times, Rob, what they'll do is they'll adjust the settings so you don't get that edge to it, and they'll do just drag and drop. And they'll literally drag and drop colors. That'll just do your flats though. But I don't want to get ahead of folks. Now, explain to folks about flats and what that refers to.
So flats are like I've heard a lot of people will hire other people to do flats, and then it's just basically they separate each. So the way I've always seen it done is they'll separate each. Like say you have like, we'll just take this because I already have this saved, and like they'll basically like let's just cut this. Which one I cut? There you go. And then you can paste this. So from what I gather, each, like say this is a flat color, it'll be like its own little. Now maybe this is wrong because I know people use channels. I'm still not an expert at channels by any means. Of the.
You're talking about a lot of people will use a mask or an alpha lock or some sort of process hold to limit where the color can go. But I've found that if you have a closed circuit, if you have a closed space in the black line, you can select and drop.
Yeah. So this would be like when I've seen people do flats, Yeah, they'll either do that or they'll make, I think, each piece separate so they can just highlight each piece and then color that with the marquee tool. And people hire people to do that. But I just kind of think that takes the fun out of it. I don't know. I mean,
well, yeah, if you enjoy the process, go for it.
Yeah.
You know, some people, and that was going to come to you, like when you're looking at a black and white piece. Let's say this piece right here. My first thoughts when I look at a black and white line art page is I'm thinking, okay, what time of day is it? Where's my light source?
Right.
You know, is it bright day? Is it twilight? Is it noon? Is it early morning? And then I start thinking about the palette. How do you approach a page?
I usually I try not to get too, I guess, complicated with it. It's either a cool palette or a warm palette. This is a warm palette. And then of course I think they're always like warm colors like will pull forward and cool colors will recede. And so that's always kind of a general idea to keep in mind. A lot of times I'll use color for focal points, bright colors. This is why his hair is orange. So in a lot of my pictures, there's so when I draw certain characters, like I won't repeat certain colors. So the color of his eyes are green, and then he has his orange hair. Those colors will not repeat anywhere else in the picture. And even in Godlings, I would do that. Like when I first started that book, a lot of the uniforms are crimson red. And that color was never repeated in the picture. I wanted that color just to stay with the uniform, so they would stand out against everything.
That makes sense. Do you think about color theory, or is it more intuitive? Because I know that there are times if I'm doing a bounce light, like from the side, if it's on something orange, I'll think, well, maybe a purple light because it's a complementary, theory. Complementary theory.
I usually, it's funny. I took a class in color theory, and I mean, again, you can spend your life studying that, and it's intense. I'm still getting around the idea. I'm starting to use more light. Like I did use, there was a picture that I used a purple light, like you said,
on especially on something orange or yellow.
Yeah.
And same thing with greens
this
and
was
reds.
A purple lit one.
Yeah.
And I kind of did that. This is more of a cool tone. But again, he's warm. And again, since he's red, I try not to repeat a lot of red colors. The one I'm doing now has red in it. But I try not to repeat. Again, the hair. So his hair is like this sort of neon orange, and that kind of helps me a little bit with like standing him out. Like it's just like your eye zooms in on the hair.
Oh yeah, pops.
And
it really does.
And I did that with some other images, like this one, even though it has orange in it, for some odd reason. I could almost argue that the focal point would be the head down here, the pumpkin head, but you can see his hair up there.
Oh yeah.
Focus. And I do a lot of composition. This is a circular composition where I'm using color to the orange as a circle to go around the picture. And then it just kind of leads your eye around.
It's the motion of the frame,
Exactly. I mean, you have the chain, which obviously is creating this circular motion, but you kind of can highlight it with the kind of balance it out with the heads and stuff.
I try to do that with my photography, and I give people a picture, and their eyes will always follow the same pattern no matter who's looking at it.
Yeah, it's just it's innate. I mean, and I'm trying to think. This one
was it unintentional Renaissance or accidental Renaissance photos? Have you seen that?
This one's a little different because it was so cool on it that he was the only warm character, but I didn't know any other way to do ghosts. So
that's cool.
It works, but again, he's still like the focal point is still him. And so I do use color theory, but I don't know how much I think about it. I think it's just innately what looks
it's
good.
More innate. Yeah.
Have
you ever thought about I know that with your style, this may not be appropriate, but I have seen colorists use depth of field blurs and motion blurs.
Oh, yeah.
Have you ever thought about that, or any lens flare effects or anything like that? Do you use effects?
Have not. I do use some Gaussian blurs. Like when I did the color, there is a orange and there was a fade, so I'll use a Gaussian blur for like certain light effects or whatever. But I sometimes, I don't know, I almost fear when I see people use Gaussian blur, they either use it too much where it's very distracting,
It can be, yes.
So you really have to have a fine edge. I do use some textures in some of my art, not in this style. There's another type of art.
Mm-hmm.
That
What's it called? Gaussian?
Gaussian, Gaussin,
Yeah.
Gaussian,
Okay.
Gaussian blur. It's used a lot. A lot of people use motion blurs as well. I think, like any kind of special effect, you have to be very selective and use it rarely, or it will become distracting.
Sure.
Comic books work so well, especially with Aaron's style, with a much more caricatured style like that, or cartoon style, as some people call it. They work much better just flat without much effect. Now, you know,
this one I use some textures on. This was the cover I did for my friend's comic. This is even a character in his comic. He just asked me to draw some crazy image. I've been drawing images like this, and so there is textures on her neck, like right here.
I see that.
Wow.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
A little bit in her helmet.
Done.
Like this is a metal sheen in her helmet. So very liberal use.
Yes.
Same thing with this is a logo from his book, so it was a metal. So you can I have mixed in textures, but very subtly. I don't
very subtly.
I would say, yeah, because that looks like looks more like realism versus just computer inks.
That was the idea. I don't know if I have any other. I'll try to be. I have some stuff in here that could be bad for the internet.
Racy.
Yeah.
Well, when we come back to your art, I want to ask you about how to give it volume, because once the flats are done, the next stage is, okay, how do I give this a little bit of volume? Now, again, with a caricatured cartoon style, it's a little bit different. Some people say, no, I want it as flat as possible. I want it to look like animation. But do you bring in, again, color theory, or do you say, look, I'm going to just use dodge and burn and darken or lighten the existing color that's already there?
I actually do. I actually shade it. So this would be his shadows on him.
Oh, nice. Can you zoom in on that for us?
Yeah.
Aaron,
so and it's super easy to do. A lot of cartoonists will do this. And all of these shadows are just there are usually like a darker color. It's on multiply. And I usually pick, like if I do, it's on multiply and I do the opacity. Okay. So like if you do like you can see it get darker on his little claw where he's holding it. And then you go down to about 20 is where I had it. That's about right. And you start to kind of like feel it. Like, okay, that's about there. You can start to feel like when it gets to be more contrast. And I can just turn this off and actually I'll just make a layer and show you how I do the layers
show us how
above
you do it.
The line layer. So the line art, you want to go above the line art. You just put it on multiply. Now, since he's a warm color, instead of going solid black, I usually pick just up here, more going towards the red. And I'll do this. So if I'm doing blue, I will actually do a blue. So it's not solid black. It just adds a little bit of warmth to it. You just put it on multiply, and I just usually adjust the. Oh, let me just do it at 37. That's how I start out. You just put it on color, and then you would just. Let me just do something on his mask.
Yeah, let's watch you work here. Yeah.
Yeah. See, you can't see my pen, so I'm always worried you can see, but you can't. So
zoom in a little bit for us so we can see that.
So you're using that blue right there, right?
Yeah, that looks really good. That gives
it looks like it's mixing with the color that's already there.
Yeah, this is on multiply. So if it was on normal, it would look, and then multiply kind of does that sort of thing.
Okay.
And then you would just color it in.
For those who don't know, multiply is like turns the layer into a piece of plexiglass or acetate or clear glass.
Okay.
So then the light's shining through it.
Oh yeah, that's basically, and then I just basically, will take my eraser and then just
you can just for highlights.
Yeah, and then it just punches out, and then basically that may be a little too harsh. Oh, whoops! I always hit the button. Go away.
Now, what brush are you using? A flat brush, a soft brush?
It's just your standard brush.
Okay.
Just your standard brush. I don't use soft brushes. that much, and so that might be a little dark, and I'll just take the opacity
badger
right
hair,
next
horse
to the
hair.
layer, and then you can just this is it at full capacity.
Right. Okay.
And as you knock it down, your eyes start to go like, no. That's starting
and
to
you
look,
find the sweet spot.
right. That's starting to look more like a shadow instead of another color, and then you would just 27. Usually, most of the time it's in 27. And this depends on the color too. So like, if I was to take, this is what you have to do each shadow by each layer. So if I do another one for his skin, and let's just say that was 27.
Right.
Because I multiply, it's going to look different on his skin.
Let's show us how you would contour shadow his skin. Let's go from
So
let's just watch you do that.
I'm super colorblind, so when you say like his armor is red, everything but the hair looks orange. Everything else on him for me is a shade of brown.
Oh really? Oh yeah. The armor is pretty red. Not redneck, but red. Maybe it's redneck. I don't know.
I see like a brown red for the armor and like a lighter brown.
Yeah.
The outsides.
Well, this also looks so different too when you see it. Like this will change color when it's printed. You're having light shine into your eye, so you always have to realize it's going to change a little bit.
It goes a little darker.
Oh, it goes darker.
That's a little dark, so you almost want to like that. That's at 27. That's almost a little dark for his skin, so you can like tone the opacity down to look more like natural for his skin.
Okay.
Like right about there, and that's a 15 or 14. So you'll notice, like, even though I'm using like certain times, like I'm doing 28, it looks maybe a little dark or whatever, so you can tone it down a little bit. And so each color on here, I do a separate shadow layer, and then I adjust the shadows for each color. So it's not
so what
just
color. What color are you using right now? Show us the actual color. Because what you're doing is you're using opacity instead of coloring, from like using a palette. You're using really opacity to contour.
Exactly.
That's interesting. Mm-hmm.
And this is like a red. It is it's basically just an off red, almost like a black, but it's an off red. I don't know if you can see that. It's very dark.
Okay. Okay.
And
yeah,
so,
I wanted the viewers to be able to see what color you're using, and that it's important for them to know you're on a layer. The layer is set to multiply, and you are adjusting the opacity.
So
right.
I'm using the opacity to adjust the shadows.
Okay.
And that always works better, because then I'll go back and readjust things and make sure they kind of look right or whatever. But eventually after you do this is all of like his shadows put together.
Oh yeah.
And so this is after I get all the shadows on. They all look like that. And
now,
these are all I'm sorry, these are all like different layers. Like there's a layer for his skin, there's a layer for his other shade of skin, there's a layer for his axe blade. And then, so you have to go through, because not each opacity matches each color. So you have to go through and adjust each, which takes a while. So you can't just do like multiply and then do the entire shadows in one opacity color, because the colors don't always mix evenly. So you just
so would you recommend to someone, you'd say, look, make a layer for the make it character centric, so you have like 6 layers for each character. One is flats.
Yeah.
One is shadows. One is highlights. One is whatever. Okay. And do you label them? Do you label them that way?
I'm lazy, and I don't always. I will label the groups. Like there's this Noct. His name is Noct, which is short for nocturnal. I don't know. Just the name popped into my head. And so,
hey, don't knock it if it works.
Yeah, don't knock it, right?
Oh,
but seriously, folks,
don't knock it.
But yeah, I just go through, and all his shadow layers are under one group. So I do use groups. That way I can turn the groups on and off. Like this is the right vampire. And these are what, if you want to take the colors off, these are what the shadows look like.
Oh,
cool.
That's cool right there. Yeah.
Yeah. So you can even do a black and white. Now you have a black and white image. And
So
some
literally, that is awesome. That's important. I don't want to gloss past this.
Yeah.
I'm sitting here looking at this thinking, you've got immediately a black and white version of your comic just because you do your shadows in the same tone. That's awesome.
Exactly. And there's some people, there's two ways you can also do this. So you can also do a grayscale. And so and I'll do this on a separate layer. I've seen this done before, and this is kind of a, I just want a new image. Let's just.
Okay.
And
Yeah. Start
say
from
you want to
scratch.
say you want to color something, and I'm just going to color an object. Like this is the base gray.
Okay.
And say it's like a, I don't know, a cube or something.
Mm-hmm.
And then you want afterwards pick like a darker gray. Let's do that for like the darker gray. And you just you can shadow your entire images in gray tones if you want. And like, okay, this is gray tones. And say you want like, and then pick almost a white gray for like a highlight. The color that, if you want to, and I've seen people do this, which adds a little bit of a different effect. You can say like, well, I want a red brick. You can just take it and let's pick like, I don't know, an off red, like say crimson red. Make this a multiplier layer, and then when you just color over top of it, it's just going to pick up all of those. So it's going to shadow itself underneath. So you just put a base color over the gray tones, and now you have, and then maybe if you want to adjust a little, like, then you have like a shadow. And I've seen people do that too. Well, they'll literally shade their entire pictures in shades of gray. It'll all be just a complete gray, and then they just add color over the top of it. On multiple.
That's actually that's a traditional way that a lot of Renaissance painters did that.
Would do that. They would do shadow studies and stuff, and it works.
Is that how you did it back then?
Yeah. That's exactly how I did it. Yes.
Yeah.
Actually, you joke, but because I have red-green color blindness, I solved a lot of that by doing gray tone illustrations and then doing the colors on layers on top of them. Like a lot of the masters would do that as well. They do egg tempera color glazes. They call it color glazing on top of a black and white image. So I did that digitally for a long time, but it's okay. I've even done comics like that, but I've always loved the vibrancy of the style that Aaron uses and that most comics use, which is flat, bright color and then a black outline of ink. I love that look, the more traditional look for comics.
Yeah. I mean, this is literally, and all you do is just, I'm adding the color underneath and it just pops it. Same thing with, this is the full thing. And then I did put a crimson in the back. So once the color, and this is them without like the shadows. And then you can see the shadows added on. And you see how much it just pops.
Can you explain the layer hierarchy? What's on the bottom, and walk us through like what's on the very bottom all the way to the very top?
So on the very, so it would be, and I'll just take this. So this is the color underneath the line art, which is set to multiply, are the color panels. It's all the colors that you're going to use. So this is the flat colors underneath the color.
Underneath the ink.
Underneath the ink, the line art. Above the line art is the shadow layers on multiply. And then you add the light layers. The light layers are done a little differently. When you add the light, it's going to add that extra volume of kick.
Oh yeah.
And that would be the final
shades,
image.
Right?
Yeah. So, and it really pulls that out. So that
it really does. It really does. So the flat. So if you were to talk it through, it would be flats, then inks, then color, then shadows,
and then just
special
color.
Effects, highlights. Okay.
And the highlights and the light is super easy. So I will just do a light thing. And a light is the same way. For this one, since it's a warm, you can use purple, whatever. I used an off yellow. And so if you were going to, again, let me focus on his head, it's the same thing, except you put it on overlay. not multiply. You put it on overlay. And
Overlay.
Then you adjust the opacity. And then you can just basically color in his, his helmet. This is pretty dark. But you just color in the light. And of course, you can fine tune this as you go along. It's basically kind of in a weird way like painting.
It is like painting.
Yeah.
It's additive.
And you have to stick to like a static light source in these, right?
Yes,
so
I usually do. You can do it. And so that is 41, that is way, but as you start adjusting the opacity down, it starts to become, okay, that looks like light.
Oh, interesting. So, okay.
Wow. Yeah.
And that's just on an overlay with their opacity. So just multiply opacity for shadows, overlay an opacity for light. And that's it.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. And then that's, as I deleting my layer, so I make sure I don't remember this. So when I add the all light, that's why I did the light. And I do add a highlight. So there are highlights on him as well.
Yeah, show us a highlight.
So a highlight to me, and the way I do highlights is I only put highlights on the main character.
Okay.
There's highlights on these nails in the background, but I only put the highlight on the character you want to see. That way it kind of pulls him out. And I can get you just like this. It's very subtle, but there's him with no highlights. Then when you add the highlights, you see just a little bit of a jump, and it pulls him out. And all highlights is as I actually put layers on normal. You can put it on multiply normal.
It's like frosting the tips.
Yeah, and then you just adjust the opacity. And I use white, just straight up white. So all of these are just white lines. That's 35 on normal. See if which one? Oh, that would be on his blade here. And then once I go down to 35, I just I always have to get it just right. But as you do this, you start to see
subtle.
It. Yeah, it just makes it more subtle and it pops it. And that's really it. That's my entire coloring style is line art, flats, shadows, light, highlights. That's it.
So mainly you're manipulating opacity, and then you're manipulating. You're using an overlay layer effect, or multiply layer effect. So it's really effects and opacity. A lot of people paint literally just right on top, like they're painting.
That's what I would do. It feels like very logical to just go over top.
But this is more manipulation of saturation of how how intense it is, and because you've separated. The most important thing people need to remember is separate everything on a layer. That way you can always get rid of it, or change it or alter it. The other reason people do flats is you can use the magic wand, which is a selection tool for Photoshop. You use the magic wand to select entire regions. Like if you had a guy like that blade, you could select the whole blade and change its color or do whatever you wanted to it with just literally touching it with one tool, with a magic wand.
Yeah, you can touch it because it'll,
it selects that area.
It's
selection and blocks out everything else.
And blocks out everything else.
You can't work in any area except what's selected. Yeah.
See, the key, that was the hardest thing to learn when first starting to use digitally was you had to master selection. And what taught me the hard way using a Wacom tablet, like this would have been like 97, right? And you didn't have touch screen. So you were looking up at a screen and you had to control it from, your hand. And what you would do is you'd literally follow the edge of the line with a lasso. And select the whole area, right? And that was not easy to do. It's much easier now when you're, because you're touching the actual screen itself.
Yeah.
But the old Wacom tablets were they were a test. Yeah, they
were, and I still do. Strangely enough, this process I do use some selections, but not as much because I'm not using gradients as much. It doesn't. It's really using the pencil and then erasing. It would be like making a shape and then erasing it down to how you want the shape to look.
Well, I noticed something about your work, Aaron, and that is when you did that piece for your friend's cover and you did some really nice hatching work, contouring the figure on the back and shoulders of the figure. I don't see that as much in your work. Do you use that for volume in your own work at all, or do you just depend on the color?
I do. I usually try to keep, if I'm going to do cross hatching, it's for black and white.
Okay.
And then I have colored it in my Godlings. I do color it when I ended up. My Godlings is super simple, and I didn't go the full. Let me see. Let's pick a random page. There's enough of them. Okay, here's a random page. So I'm not using the lights and shadows in here except very minimally. So even on her, I'm letting the cross hatching do the volume, and I don't even think there's a little bit of shadow here, and like even on him there's a little bit of shadow by his knuckles right here, but very minimal, because the idea is I wanted the cross hatching to do the work. So I didn't like it felt redundant to like do the cross hatching and then shadow over the cross hatching. Like, well, then why do I put the cross
then why do the cross hatching? Phil says, hey, Coloring Hepcats. Hey, Phil, thanks for watching. If you have a question for Aaron, please feel free to post it for us. I like with your work particularly, Aaron, I like the fact that you use color rather than hatching. For more realistic style, I like hatching because I love line work, period. But I like the line work you use for your style. It's perfect. See the intensity of the color of that character on the left and how that just jumps forward. I mean, you keep focusing on that character.
Again, it's all cool colors, and he's the only crimson. And his blue and crimson only 1G. So he pops immediately. I did use a little bit of gradient on the back of the wall. Like, that's the extent of my gradients. Like, I use a little bit of color gradient from the dark, but just very minor. And even when I do the shadows, I only shadow certain things. Like, I'll shadow her green, and I shadowed a little bit of the brown. But I wouldn't shadow, like, the lighter. So I would pick, like, 3 colors to shadow. Like, I shadowed the reds, and then I didn't shadow the browns. And I shadowed a little bit of his skin, and that's it. Very subtle shadows. The idea was I wanted the crosshatch to do most of the talking. The way I got the trick is to not make it look so flat. Is like that's kind of more flat, but I use these old pages, and then I put a texture over the top of the old page, so it kind of gives this weird texture. My comic art is simpler. I try to, if I'm doing like vampires, I could just go like ballistic. In fact, I want to do a knocked comic book, and I want to actually do the entire comic in this color style with the shadows, and that's going to take a while. So I'm doing one comic at a time, and each comic will be its own thing.
Hey man, you can knock that out.
Yeah, no problem, right? It takes me about, once I do something like this, it takes me like 3 days, maybe 4, depending on it. And so most like pencil pages like this color, I would color like 2 pages of this like a day. I can color 2 pages a day because it's just simple colors. So this is like much better. It looks cooler, but again, the cooler it looks, the more time it takes.
The more time it takes,
right. Godlings, I want a specific look, so I didn't want to focus on all these crazy colors. I wanted to do more cross hatching, and I've always done that with my comics. I want specific looks, so I won't always have the same style. Like I can even show you old art that I was digging to my do I have so this is an old book I did called Deadluck when the whole thing's done, and it's got to load. Okay, we'll let it load for a minute. And Deadluck was like almost written like a kid's book, and I did this back in we'll just do that page. So this was thicker lines. The lines were a little thicker than this. And I used my shadow and the coloring technique, but it's much more cartoony. And this was like 60 pages, and this whole book's done. I got to figure out how to. The printing's a little off because it's a horizontal book. But yeah, I did this in college just to practice coloring because I was still learning this. I'm like, I'm going to do a whole thing. But each one of and these were inked with a brush. So this was traditionally inked with a brush, not digitally.
Okay, not digital.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and of course, you can see from that coloring style to this, I've refined it.
Oh, yeah.
More
quite
obviously.
A bit.
But this was supposed to be a much simpler style. And then I've gone more,
like all detailed and crazy and stuff. So yeah, I will actually pick the ones that my children's books are the ones that can be the most intense. And those are, let me see, it's
by intense you mean more like
just more
saturated color, less muted tone, or more colors? What do you mean by more intense?
just a lot. This is there's just a lot of it.
Oh, okay. I see what you mean.
So they're full page spreads. This
Yeah.
this book was meant, I was like hiding animals in it. So in this one, there's like little animals and stuff for the kids to find. And
That's
the
very
idea
cool.
was it was much more picture focused than story. So there's a little bit of writing, and then there's a lot of focus on
visuals. Yeah.
Visuals. I wanted the people to look at it. So this was all inked by hand, and then it was colored in the computer. But there's just a lot to it. And you get, I mean, the main light source, of course, was the fire. And in the fire, I did use a Gaussian blur inside the flames to make the flames kind of poke out. And then a lot of times I would just go. So that was, and this is one of my books that was published by Action Lab. I think it was like, did I have one of the city scenes? Takes a while. This particular book, each page, just to color it would take almost a week.
Okay.
So this whole book took an entire year to make. But again, it's supposed to be a lot of it. I mean, that's the idea.
Yeah, that's very saturated. Can you zoom in to some of the
close-ups
here? I'd love to see like the textures, your architecture.
I'm not sure if I did any texture. I did some light here and there.
I see that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very nice. Very nice. It's
So would you
fair to
consider
say
the
a lot
doors
of
and shingles texture?
Yeah. I love the design. Your
And
fairy
it's-
tale world there. It's great.
Yeah, she's a tour guide, and she takes this family on a tour of a fantasy land.
Yeah.
And that's why you see all the animals that they have the tour map and they're all pointing and stuff. And what's funny is as they go through the tour, they get stuff, like any tourist would buy stuff. So this is her, like the mother's hair. And then as you get to the very end of the book, she gets a hairstyle, like her hair done. At the
That's awesome.
And they actually show like this is the mermaids. It takes, these are big files, obviously.
Big files. I was going to ask you, do you ever think about saving out a flattened version that you can just show?
Yeah, well, these are all printed in books.
Mm-hmm.
But this is her at the hair salon. So she gets, and then I keep that hairstyle through the rest of the story. So when she gets her hair done, then her hair is the same thing. Like, and the dad gets a helmet. So they're changing. This is the idea.
Cool.
Of like, it was like this mermaid hair salon.
I'm a merman, Dad.
Yeah.
Merman.
And there's a merman here, and they're getting all of their. So yeah, and even in this story, I built in a secret there. See if I could even find him. There's this little character right here. It's like this little mushroom dude.
Let's see him.
There. He's in every picture, but I don't tell you. And so it's up to you to find him.
Hey, mushroom dude.
So,
yeah.
Waldo.
Exactly. But I don't even hint that he's even on the cover. And so if somebody looks at the book enough, all of a sudden they'll pick up like, hey, wait a minute, this guy's he's in every image. And he's very small. Like even in this one, he is right there.
See him.
Very small. And you can see, I mean, the main size of the book is about that size. So they're small. Let me see. Yeah. So that's
I got a question for you. As far as process, if there are aspiring colorists out there and they want to start coloring their books, do you have like go-to inspiration? Like, oh man, they've got to look at this person. This woman's excellent color. This guy's an excellent colorist. Do you have, people you look at?
I'm trying to think. Not really. I just started coloring my I use the website Cooler, Adobe Cooler, which is Kuler, and that helps me with color choices. And I don't know if I can show it online, so
don't worry about that. Yeah, Cooler.
It's basically you would choose, like you would basically like say this is a yellow. You would choose a color. You would grab this number, which would be the I can't remember the name of that. The Pantone.
It's either
number.
RGB or it's a CMYK.
Right. And then once you get that number, And
Or
then you go
hexadecimal.
and drop this into your, like, you go to Cooler and there's all these different color combinations and stuff. What you would do is drop that color and like, this is your main color. And then Cooler would tell you all the other colors that would go with that color.
Oh, okay. Okay. So it's
So-
an advisory.
Advisories. Exactly.
Yeah.
And so it
Yeah,
really
yeah.
is helpful. That way you're not getting the candy color effect. You keep helping me use my eyes. And from there, I don't look at, I know it's funny, I don't look at a lot of colorists. I'm trying to think. I do like some coloring style of the Udon, which is Udon is a company that does Street Fighter and art and stuff. Udon, like the noodles. And they have a very cartoon, but then just look at cartoons or whatever. Most of the time when I'm coloring, I am just going with what I think. And then I'll look at like real life stuff. Like if I want color clothes, I'll look up clothes or whatever for color ideas. But very rarely do I look at color. I'm not a huge fan of a lot of modern day color where a lot of things are monochromatic and certain, like this is all green and this is all red and this is all blue. Like whole scenes are that way. That is, I think, overdone to the point where I think it's okay. We've gotten that. It's like the lens flare. Okay, the monochromatic crap is done. We've done that. Let's move on. Add color to your comics. Don't sit there and be like, yeah, but everything's blue. You got, I don't care. Add color. You got a whole spectrum of color.
Unless you're trying to do an effect, like I used.
Yeah.
I used a blue overlay to make it look like a night scene.
Yeah.
In one color that I did. I mean, I colored it all, and then I put a layer over the top of it of blue and found the right opacity to make it look like it was a nighttime scene.
Yeah, and
I can do stuff like that
before, but I'm trying to think of like.
That'd be the only time I would use something like that.
What should young artists who really want to learn about how to color these comic books, should they watch anime, like some anime stuff? Can you recommend for them, or
you can. Again, this is a cartoon style of coloring, which is more. I was going to use this is monochromatic, and I was using orange. It would be 14, where you would see, like even on the. Did I do 14? Oh no, maybe it was. I'm going back to 12, so I'm going backwards. The reds and stuff to really highlight the fact that he's, got this energy flowing. God, I can't even.
Did you use an airbrush there in that center glow? That looked like a soft.
Yeah,
light.
so that's just a soft brush. Is so basically to get the glow, I will use certain. Okay, so this is actually a good. Okay,
that's a good page
to get
to talk about.
The glow effect, you can use FX, and I do use inner and outer glow. And so panel 1 does have, with the red, it has an inner and outer glow, and if you take those off, it's just like a red ball.
Yeah, show us, like, click on and off the appropriate layers.
Yeah, so this is the inner glow, and you can add noise to it. So the noise, it makes it pixelated, so it looks like it's like energy. And then I just added an outer glow. And you just have to have but you have to keep your shape. So like this would just be like a big red shape, and then you can add inner and outer glow.
Wow.
Same thing with the red.
How does it know what to highlight, what to glow around?
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, how does
the edges? It's the edge.
How does it select? Okay.
It goes inside the edge and outside. It's using the edge.
Yeah.
And,
outside edge of it. Yeah.
So you have to select the edge to say outside, inside of this.
No.
This is the inner glow palette, and so
it's on its own layer, right?
Yeah. It's an effect on the layer.
Got it.
Yeah. And so I can sit there, and if I adjust the size, see, it'll adjust.
Oh
the
yeah,
size
there you go. Okay.
Or if you adjust the choke,
that's a handy little effect.
Yeah.
I use that a lot.
It's noise. This is the noise. You put the noise up, it makes it more pixelated. If you turn the noise down, it'll be like no pixelation. It'll just be smooth.
Very smooth.
And so, you just play with it. To get the inner glow is literally I just took a soft brush and it just basically. So let me just turn these.
Oh wow! Look at that.
It's just soft brush. One dot of the soft brush, another dot, bigger dot.
Whoa.
So you just You would just take like, okay, I want to do yellow, and you just put it on a soft brush thing. You want to do the soft brush opacity, so you should knock the opacity of the brush down to like maybe 32. And then you just let us do another layer, and then the brush, and then I make it big. You can make the brush kind of big, and you just basically tap.
Oh, sweet. Yeah.
And you're starting to get that glow effect. And then to make it even, you do white, you do another layer. Same thing, except now you want to shrink your brush, put it in the center, tap. See, you're starting to get the glow. And then, one more usually just for like the big effect, the dot of where it's going, and just tap, make it a little dark. And then now you have like that's it.
Mm-hmm. Like, I want to ask a question real quick. Let's say you wanted the core of that highlight to be pure white. Would you just do another layer on top of it and do a solid white dot?
Yeah, you would just do that. And you can just, you could do the same effect by just doing a solid and doing a Gaussian blur, which would adjust. So let's turn the white off, and let's do let's just do a solid white dot in here. And let's make it small because it's going to spread out. Like, actually, let's put the opacity straight up. Just make a solid white dot. That's there's textures over the top, but that's
yeah. I can see it.
Yeah, very and then cool. You can go to the blur, the Gaussian blur, and then from there you can start adjusting. Like, that's the dots there, and then as you adjust it, you can get more. So if you want to adjust the blur effect, you can do it that way.
Fuzz up the edges,
yeah. And so that way you don't have to worry about that stuff. So yeah, there's again, as you start to notice, Photoshop is a lot about there's many ways to do the same thing.
Oh yeah, it's what people prefer. Some people would do that a completely different way, but what's cool about this is it's such a powerful program that you find your own way that's comfortable and fast for you. Yes. There's no right or wrong way with Photoshop. It's whatever brings you the result. Hey, show us how to do a lightning bolt. I would love to see how you put lightning around that
so to do
ball.
Let's just say if I was to do like a lightning, and let me see, let's just do that. Oh no, go back in the group. Oh, panel 1 group. Okay. And I'll just sit there. I'll do a bright yellow, and then we can do that. And of course, there's not going to be any lines on this because we'll just do the straight up lightning bolt. It was like,
let's see how that works. Oh yeah. Now, where are you on the layer hierarchy? Tell us where you are.
I am below the ink line. So I am right below. I'm in the color section. Then I would, make it sharper by using your erase tool to erase away the edges. And then strangely enough, you would pick yellow for a lightning bolt. Most lightning is actually blue or purple. Very rarely. Right. I'm not sure where the yellow part comes in. That's why actually Boomer is blue, because lightning is mostly blue. Blue is much more of an intense heat than yellow. It's weird.
Yeah, that's
I thought, it's a question too, that I was interested that you chose that color, because I would have chosen a pure white to do the bolt, and then I would have put something around it, maybe a color around it, because the core of the lightning bolt would be pure white, and maybe the edges would be blue. Okay.
Well, we're getting to that. So you get FX, and you would do an inner glow. And then you do a solid white, and you want to put center, and we can do like maybe more precise, and we'll do the opacity, and there's your and then
nice,
you can kind of the size of it, like there.
So cool. You basically did inner glow on that layer, and then you adjust it. What were the parameter adjustments that you.
This is what I'm still kind of, and of course you can kind of like, and you can do an edge, or you can actually do the center, and you would play around with this more. But that would be more like, and then from there, once I get like the inner glow, and I would take the opacity down or make it, let me see this size, like you can do, and now you got me noise or whatever. And then from over the top, if you want, you can just do a straight up soft brush, do the opacity down and make it solid white, and then just basically color in like the lightning bolt more straight up, something like that. And again, I mean, even with the lightning bolt, I would actually almost put, because I put it like just a slight blur on the bolt itself to blur those edges a little bit.
Very nice.
Like maybe, and then you could do line art, but I mean, you can play around with it simple. So, but you can do white, or you can paint in the white. Let me see, because I have done lightning bolts on him before. I am going to grab. I got to try to think of like what page today.
Okay.
So now this is Photoshop. Have you dealt or explored Fresco or Illustrator?
I do Illustrator a lot. Illustrator is a whole different beast. That's vector art.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, I don't play with it as much.
What does
I
that
do
mean,
all my
vector?
lettering in
Yeah. The thing about
It's a lot better
Illustrator
for that.
is it's vector based, which means it's got geometry and mathematics that make the images scalable to whatever size, and they don't pixelate. That's excellent in terms of titles and copy. It makes for very difficult. You have to be quite a technical mind to want to do illustration in Illustrator, which is odd that it's called Illustrator.
Yeah.
I've seen people do completely lifelike.
Yes.
I've seen people do completely lifelike illustrations.
That amazes me, because I have no concept how I could do that.
It's just absolute patience, and I've seen
best
people.
way.
Yeah.
I don't have
it's
patience
doable.
for that.
The way people do it, Rob, I've seen them do it. The way it's done, and the way to get your head around it is, imagine taking little pieces of colored construction paper and layering them all on top of each other to paint a portrait. Everything is a geometric thing, and you just blur it, right? So Photoshop is more intuitive to the artist in terms of you're worried about the image, not the edge of the image. And Illustrator is about the edge of the image.
And I did a lot of early on. I did a lot of work with an airbrush, a real airbrush.
Yeah.
In fact, I still have it. So Photoshop works in my mind similarly to that, right? And that's how my mind works, is like an airbrush.
Same here.
So,
Same here.
Yeah.
Hey,
you know,
Aaron, go back to that. Well, that stop. I love that piece. That is a
That's nice. I love those.
Wow,
lightning bolts
dude.
are great.
Hey,
I love those lightning bolts.
Can we do a layer exploration of that piece of artwork? Like, break it down to just. I want to see like constructing that entire piece in layers. Like, I want to see just the black and white, and then as you go. I'd love
This was
to
the
see
first
that.
line I drew. This was the second line I drew.
Yeah. Look at that.
I think,
that is cool.
Yeah, I think that was the initial image. That was it.
That was it.
Wow.
So isn't that cool? Like, okay, so start adding and talking about, okay, so there's your gray.
This is the blue. And I just wanted, like, this scene that takes place in the comic is in the mountains. And I wanted him to be inspired by Dragon Ball Z stuff, like with the power starting to come up underneath him. All right. This is the base color. I mean, again, you can see even because I'm actually going to, the stones actually do have a texture on them. There was a stone texture, like on the stones themselves.
Can you zoom in? Maybe we can catch that on screen.
Yeah. So
I'd
if you
love
look
to
at
see
the
what you got.
stones, this is like, that's natural texture.
Oh,
those are just pictures of stones
That's
on
real
it to
nice,
give it,
Aaron.
to give it texture. Wow. I do that sometimes, not all the time, but sometimes with stones, especially for the cover. I'm like, yeah, why not? This is like, I think like just me playing. I may not put the layer like the light. This is the highlight. Again, this is the shadows. Now the light's going to be coming from both sides, so it's hitting like on his coat, like here, and it's hitting on both sides. So you shadow him in the center, and as you go down.
We call that a core shadow. So you want a
Yeah.
core shadow since you've got lights on both sides.
And this is stuff at the
Are
bottom.
you operating with overlay, or are you operating with multiply?
That's multiply. So my shadows are all on multiply.
Okay.
And then again, to add the light, and the light's going to be a little more intense because of the lightning bolts. And then I just add the highlights to them, which the highlights are very subtle, but they just kind of make them pop. So that's the final image. To do that, there's a template that goes over the top of the book, and that's why there's not a lot of stuff. It looks like crap on the bottom, but that's okay. The lightning bolts were basic shapes. No line, and I didn't want to put any line. I wanted to add the effects after. I wanted to be very subtle. I didn't want them to be like super intense.
Hey, Tommy saying loving the color talk and art. Thanks, Tommy.
Thanks, Tommy.
Yeah, that looks good, man. I mean, you're saying
I like that effect.
It has a frame too. I love that effect, man. Wow.
And that's just, let me see if I can. Yeah, it's just those are his little hands, and did I combine them there? Maybe I combined them. Yeah. So it's just, it's just that's just a soft brush on yellow, and I just hit it twice with a soft brush, and then I just added in the white, so it looks like it's hotter in the center. I just did an inner glow for the lightning bolt, very very subtle, and then just an outer glow, and that was it. And that's how I made it. Even the inner glow, the size. Again, I'm doing it very much sort of like, adding noise. Noise adds. I can go back over I think the opacity is up, but I bring the opacity down so you don't see it as much. I wanted the whole thing subtle. What makes it very subtle is the fact that this whole layer is on 55. That's it at 100%.
Okay, and you made it
very
more
bright. So I took the entire layer and knocked the opacity down to 55 because I wanted him to be the focal point. And then when you add it in, it just
and that with the framing of the graphics, then that brings it all together and unifies it. I wanted to ask, let's say you're working and you had an art director and they said, "Hey, Aaron, can you do some yellow edge lighting on his arms? I just want to see what that would look like." How would you edge light the yellow bouncing from those lightning bolts? Let's say on the edge of his arms.
I think I did. Let me see here. It looks like it was yellow, and I think I made the yellow more intense. Let's turn off the lightning bolt. The light here, you can do, if you want to do that, you would just,
add a layer.
Straight up dude, it's like hard my opacity. And then you can just basically just draw in straight yellow.
Yeah, there you go.
Then it would just, and then from there,
and then up on his shoulders, go up, put some on the shoulder. I just want to see I'm just curious to see what it looks like.
No, you would just, you can just.
You can trash this layer after, obviously. But I just wanted to see it just to show people like what edge lighting can do on a piece. It can really make something pop.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Now, would you soften it, or would you leave it hard edge like that?
I would leave it myself because it just matches. I would leave it hard edged.
Okay, that's what I would say.
Strangely enough, if you actually just sit on and look at shadows at life, most shadows, even though have soft edges, some do. A lot of shadows are very hard edged.
Yeah,
more than you would think. And so it's just like a certain style. And then again, I would just. Now you can do overlay, but the overlay is going to take away the yellow. So, like, say if you do overlay, then it's going to look. See how that kind of vanishes?
Yeah. See, I would do normal.
So you just
would do normal for that,
and then you would just adjust the opacity.
Right.
As you see fit.
Yeah! Wow.
And then you could take it down so it looks like it's just bouncing right off it. Yeah. And you could maybe do a little Gaussian blur or something. Yeah, you can do that, and that would. totally do something like that, and then you would just
Sweet.
yeah. You can. It just adding all this stuff in. It's Photoshop's definitely a powerful tool, and I think it's funny how so many people who use Photoshop, will say stuff like, "Do you know?" Like they'll be certified in it. And it's like, "Yeah, I only know like 25% of Photoshop." Like it's
and they're
such a
certified,
Yeah.
Photoshop users.
Oh yeah, I think most people admit to they learn just enough to accomplish their tasks, but
Yeah.
it would be very difficult to be comprehensive.
Everything Aaron has talked about tonight with the multiplying layers and all that
Yeah.
stuff, I know absolutely nothing about how to do that. Not one bit.
It is
I
super
do my
easy.
coloring completely differently.
Yeah, really.
This is so cool.
Yeah, it's a whole different process. I
Gentlemen,
learned it.
I just lost power.
I
I
bought this
might have to
comic book.
run.
Oh, Rory,
Yeah.
are you okay, man?
Yeah.
Hopefully it's a temporary loss.
Hopefully we'll
it's
see.
temporary.
We shall see.
Okay.
This was another one where I did a glow effect, and I also sometimes to get glow effects, you can do no, that's my template. Let me see the art. Is there art? Okay,
Can
I do
you?
the art.
Yeah. Can you break it apart for
Yeah.
us so that we can see layer by layer? Let's do an autopsy of this thing and see.
So that's
There we
again
go.
what I started with,
Yes.
and then
Like, look,
you know,
I want everybody to notice, look how flat this image is right now.
yeah,
And just with Aaron's use of color, how he brings it to life, he brings a lot of energy to it. But I want people who are aspiring comic artists to realize the image itself can be simple. If you have facility and talent with coloring techniques, the line art can be very simple, but you can still accomplish it and create a compelling and dramatic image because you understand color. And that's one thing Aaron does. So let's walk through this.
and that was awesome. Just using his skin and again, I wanted to make his eyes glow. How do you make his eyes glow? Well, you make that light and everything else darker. You can actually do a highlight behind his head. This is a soft like highlight behind his head. Again, do extra stuff on here. There's a little bit of a gradient that I do a little darker down below. Again, the shadows, but again, all the shadows are coming from that light source of his eyes, so they're all darker.
So pop that shadow layer on and off for us. So
and I actually did a gradient. That's another cheat. You can do you can do a little bit of a gradient. So this is this skin.
Before, after.
Right. And then you could do a skin, but you want to still see that focus. So you could do a gradient later from the top, and that still makes it dark up here and keeps adding it. But again, since this is going to be light, the shadows are not going to play as much of an impact as the light. Now you start to see that sort of now the light's hitting his hands and adding that.
Nice.
And then you start
very
adding
nice work.
The highlights.
Oh, yeah.
And then you add that sort of glow in the middle of his eye, and then pretty soon you have this. He looks like he's enraged. And that started from a very simple, I mean, all of this started from just a very simple image.
Yeah. I want that demonstrates exactly what I wanted to do tonight, which was to
that's almost all geometric shapes.
Yeah.
How powerful color is. Especially
right.
if you're doing, a cartoon style like that.
It's almost all color. And that's, I've always been drawn to more of a cartoon style. That's always been my jam.
Yeah. It's good.
Because I like Saturday morning cartoons and all of that. But all of that, and a lot of here I have another cover I could do that took me super easy to draw. But again, it was all magical effects. And I think it was cover 10, but I could be wrong. My poor machine.
So let's talk about timing as we're getting closer to the end of the broadcast here. Let's talk about what should a brand new colorist who's getting started, once they have facility with the application, so they understand how to color. How long does it take if you've got a cartoon style? Ooh, that's cool.
Ooh, that's nice.
How long does it take to color like that, for example? What can they expect as far as time?
The bigger ones I saw, it took me a week. I'd say 2 to 3 days it takes me to color it. Some odd reason shadows are the longest flat colors. And I will forewarn you that most of the time you're going to put in flat colors, you're going to think your art looks like crap. I do that all the time, and then this isn't turning out. Then I add the shadows and light. And I'm like, oh, now it's awesome. So get past the flat color look. You just got to push through it and do the lights. Shadows take the second longest, and then the highlights are really simple. It's really color because you're just coloring the opposite side. This whole thing started. Let's see if I can turn off all the.
Yeah, let's break this one down. Let's just look at
it.
Oh, look at that. So
that's all
I really want people to focus on that and be like, okay, so first of all, that's a testament to Aaron's imagination, because in his mind, he knows what's coming. He knows the color system that's going to elevate that from just fairly simple line art to a very dramatic piece. So what was the first thing you did? Let's go layer by layer. First thing, second thing.
That would just be, adding the color is base, and then just this big purple mass. On these are what it was before.
Okay.
And then I added the inner glow and the outer glow. You're not going to see the outer glow because it's on white. Now, of course, to make it glow, anything glow, put that on black. Boom.
Put it on a black background. Right? Boom. All of a sudden, everything pops. Yeah.
Right.
Plus, reminding everyone, the reason there's a roughness there at the bottom is that he's got a framework. He's got a graphic.
Yeah, so the
frame.
template just covers it up.
Right.
Yeah, so and then from there, this one I just really started playing with, like, there's a gradient here for the light shining further. Then I started playing with these dots, and these are just basically the soft brush dots. You just pop them on, and this is 100%, but you can like tone the opacity down. So it looks like there's little balls of light glowing through it. Add the light on for his face. And this would be more striking because it's a more intense light. The light for his jacket. I have no idea what that layer did. Probably something important. Probably some. Oh wait, there we go. It's an extra light. So I actually
it was important when you did it.
Sometimes I will do this, and you can do this. So this was the initial light source, but to make that pop more, I will actually put a second light layer around it.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
And so sometimes that makes it more intense. And then the highlights. So this whole light came from. Let me see here. That. It turned on that, added a second layer of light, and then the highlights, and it really made him light. And then this is the shadow layer. The shadows are going to be darker because the light's coming. And then I added this little visual effect, and this whole thing down here was just done by doing, you would take like this tool.
Okay, what tool are you using?
This is a hard selection tool.
Okay, all right.
And then you just kind of like click it and make
nice.
The highlight.
Fill
it in, and then you have your shape. That's the way I did that. And then I did I blurred it. And then from there, I added like just a little more light at the bottom, like another So this is very subtle, but you'll see it when I focus it. There's a second one there.
Okay.
But I did it to the point where I didn't really want you to see it, just a hint of it. So that's it. And then that was it. And then you just add the frame, and boom, it looks like he's being enveloped in light.
Yeah, that's really powerful. Really powerful piece. So along with saturation, with the overlay effect, would you say what's more important, color theory or lighting for you when you're doing colors?
I think it's color theory. I think colors work. The one rule I try to use a lot of my, like even when I designed this character, the main colors are gold and red. I mean, you have the browns and the greens, but gold and red are like the two. I usually pick at least two main colors and then a third bright color, like a third off color to be the orange in his hair. And you can have other colors like more subdued, but the main colors of the characters will be that. Like, let me pick up the oh, I know. I'm drawing all this stuff off of a portable hard drive, so it takes a minute for my computer to think. Like, what are you doing?
No worries.
And so these are like mostly red, the crimson red, and then the gold for like him. So it'd be like red and then blue for him, so red, blue, and then you have the browns, which are kind of like neutral, gold, red, and she is blue, red. Those are the
Okay.
two main colors, and then I would add like highlights, like a little bit of purple, whatever.
Sure.
But I usually pick two colors to be the predominant colors in the character, and then you can add little other colors here and there to do like, well, he's got like bandages, and then he's got like, the leather straps and other stuff.
Sure.
But you kind of want to pick those two, and usually those are your brightest, most saturated colors. Same thing with him, gold, red. I know, I guess I like that color.
So it's important to choose the palette for the characters that you want to stand forward, that you want to advance in front of the background, and keep those, is it fair to say, keep those saturated, keep those
I would say, look at like Batman. Batman, if you look at Neil Adams, was gray blue. The yellow was the pop color. Superman was the same way. It was blue, red,
and primaries.
Didn't he have like yellow or something in his?
Yeah, blue, yellow, and red is Superman.
And two of those colors are going to be the predominant colors, and then you're going to have your other sort of odd pop color. I call it the pop color because it's the one color that, like, it's like this guy's hair. It's the orange hair. There's nothing else on his body that has that color, so it draws your attention.
So Batman's belt and the shield
Batman's belt and the oval, those
exactly
are the yellow. It's interesting. However many times they try to reinvent, the Batman outfit with the black bat against gray and all this, and they've been very successful with it. Don't get me wrong, but what's interesting is when I'm at a convention and someone wants me to draw Batman, they want that classic Batman look, and I think a lot of that is because the color it generates with people. So
there's, I think, a lot of modern, like, Image kind of went over. They could color everything, and I think Image sometimes in their comics went overboard with like some of the characters are like a rainbow of colors, and there is a rainbow effect. And you can have saturated colors, so do desaturated colors. Like the saturated color on this guy is the gold. You could almost see his body outline with this bright gold yellow with the mask and then you have the red and stuff. But those are the primary. And again, I use the yellow in his mask and with the eyes to draw your attention. I do think less colors can work better. I think a lot of people like added colors and colors and colors, and they still. The other thing too, when I use most of my colors, let me turn off all the layers. Besides the line art, like if I'm doing the browns, I'm over here in the gray area. Even the yellow, which looks saturated, is still kind of not completely. I very rarely ever do completely saturated stuff. I'm still, that's as close as I get. I sometimes like of course his eyes, are going to be way up here in the bright area. And the orange will be up there. But almost everything else is down in that gray tone. You're going to the grays, even the grays. It's just like it's a reddish gray. Even with the cool color, even with their green skin, I think it's more over there.
I see where you are on the spectrum,
which is funny because people always say, well, your colors are so saturated. I'm like, not really.
Not really.
Not really. It's maybe it's the light. When you add the lights and highlights, they look very saturated.
One thing about your art, it's enhanced by the fact that it's what I call open for. We used to call it open for color. And what that meant was in a coloring book, a traditional coloring book, the idea is to create shapes so that the person coloring in the coloring book has the opportunity to do the form and the volume themselves. So you're creating just the outline. And I really want to emphasize the fact that I chose your art style to feature color tutorial for a reason. And that is because I wanted to show how powerful color is with a very simple cartoon style. Because I've seen people color a realistic Hatch style, like my style, you know, the Neil Adams look, and it will kill it. If you overdo colors on that, it will kill it. Because the reason we draw that way is to give it form so that the colors can remain fairly flat. Right?
Yeah.
I have to tell colorists, like, no. The reason I spend all this time hatching is so you don't have to do much work. Literally, just drop flats in there and it will work just fine. You know.
Yeah.
So
same with my work.
Yeah. Same thing with you, Rob. So, but for Aaron's style, this is a fantastic demonstration of how powerful color can enhance a caricatured cartoon style
it's what really makes his work pop.
Yes,
it's what makes his work work.
And I didn't start coloring until 2009, 2008, where I really dived into it.
That's a while ago now, Aaron.
Yeah, it's a while. So it's funny because I always still think people always like my colors. I'm like, I always think that's the place I'm still learning the most. Like I think I've gotten down drawing.
You'll never stop learning either.
Pretty well, I can fake it with the best, but color I'm still learning. Some people are like, I really like your color work. I'm like, really? I'm like, because I see other colors sometimes. I'm like, crap, but I do love the cartoon look. I always have. I've liked geometric shapes, bigger shapes. But yeah, I know there's a few people that say like, but when you sell the when you sell the black and white version of this, like the traditional work, it looks like a coloring book. I actually like this, but some people want all that cross hatching or whatever. I like simple line art.
I like that line art. For your style, that's beautiful. That's exactly, that works. That works perfectly. Now, if you throw in the grays, I love that too, because now you've got your black and white version of your book. You do. That looks finished to me.
That looks good there. Just
you
like
can, and I should start posting my black and whites. Yeah,
it's got volume.
You really
now.
should.
Yeah,
it's got volume. It's got just as much drama, almost I should say, as much drama as the fully colored piece.
You might play with it a little bit more, put a little more gray in it, but that just there works.
Yeah,
I would also say throw some pure whites in the highlights, and you really do have a piece.
Exactly.
I don't know if you ever did this in school in art classes, but you'd ever do like you take a neutral piece of charcoal paper and you just have your white chalk and your black chalk, and then you push and pull. Actually. That's real fun.
It is really fun. Yeah, I like doing that a lot. And it's funny. I actually drew the detail in the heads, and don't be afraid to get rid of stuff, because even that, there's I blocked all the lines out. Like this is the detail on the top of their heads, but it's all kind of vanished with the color. That was kind of, because I wanted their eyes to be like that was the idea too. As you see him, and then as you go up, you see the three eyes looking down at him. If you notice, the red,
I do see that.
The blood red that they're dribbling out of their mouths is the most saturated red on there.
Yes.
So I wanted to kind of play with that too. There's lots of, I know color is definitely fun, and I've always really enjoyed. I enjoyed coloring your work. It was different, but adding my coloring style to your style, Dean, I think was a fun effect.
It did. Don't ever do it again. But no,
okay.
It worked. No, I liked it. It worked out. It worked out great. As we close out tonight, I want to ask you, Aaron, for those aspiring colorists out there, what do you recommend that they learn to use besides Photoshop? We've talked a lot about Photoshop. Should they use traditional analog colors too to get to know color theory more? What's your best advice for aspiring colorists?
I was never confident enough to use pens and analog like paints. I did some paintings, but I was never confident enough. Digital coloring let me be able to if you make a mistake, you can undo it. So that was more confident to me to do it. I was feel like, I'm going to draw this.
That's a huge thing in Photoshop. In Airbrush, if you make a mistake, you got to start all over.
That's true.
And I've done that
very
before.
Careful. Oh yeah.
Where it's like I've done airbrush stuff and then painting, and then it's like, well, I could draw it again, but so it's very nerve-wracking. I would say start in digital to play with color.
Awesome.
Again, you are having light shine out of the screen. So if I print this, these colors are going to look darker.
Okay.
And the print, this is RGB, which is red, green, blue for the screen. If I put them in CMYK, you're going to see a little bit of a shift.
It'll look more like it will when it prints.
Yeah. And so this is going to take a few minutes, but you see it's a minor shift, but it's just a little darker.
In some cases, it's a huge shift depending on how you work. I've had that happen. Is I'll do it in RGB and then shift it to CMYK, and it just ruins it.
Yeah, and you're like,
what happened? You're like, what happened? What happened? So
it's called. I don't know much about it, but it's called gamut. It's it's the gamut gets thrown off when you change it from RGB to CMYK.
Yeah,
it's good to know. Something happens. One color doesn't shift properly when you go from one to the other. It's not as vibrant.
So, Aaron, where can people go as we close out tonight to see Godlings? And because I want them to see more of your work.
You can see it on Webtoons right now.
Okay.
You can go to my Humphreys Illustration, which my last name, if you see it written, is HUMPHRES. HumphreysIllustration.com is my portfolio sites. I have not put any Knock the Barbarian illustrations up there yet. I'm getting around to that. So these ones you'll find on my Facebook. You just go to Facebook or Instagram, Humphreys Illustration, both. You'll find these images. I do have Humphreys Illustration at bigcartel.com, which is my store. I'm not selling these prints yet, but I actually like to print some. I've thought about, all I sell in my store is my comic book and my kids' books, but I've actually thought about starting the prints because I do have individual prints of original artwork in there, and I thought about, but I don't know how, because I know you can go to a printing place I think it's called Cat Print. We can do like really nice cardstock 11x17 prints, and I have a few of those I sell at conventions, but I just never thought about putting prints in my store, but I know people do, so I don't know, I should start throwing them up.
It's something you should do. Prints do well. And then one last thing before we go, what about your Silverline work? I want people to go check out your Silverline work as well.
My Silverline work right now, I think you can find Fire Rush and Indie Planet. I do not have those images on my Humphreys Illustration. You can find them on Facebook and Instagram, but I do not have those on my store or my website. I think there's a limit to what I can do. My website, you're going to see some comic work, then you're going to see some other type of my illustrator work and storyboarding, which is the other stuff I do. But I think there might be a limit, so I may have to look into see if I can, because I think the more you add, the more they charge, and I'm like, well, how much can I add before they start charging me more? And they love to do this, even with Big Cartel and stuff, I think. But I'd like to start selling prints or whatever. I actually did make a bunch of prints of the ones like with the ladies and stuff that I've done, and those are just kind of, is my thing going to work now, or did I just freeze my computer? There we go. And
what about obsoletes? I want to mention obsoletes as well.
Obsoletes is coming, and then when that gets done, I'd like to start I need to put Fire Rush in my store to buy, and I need to put obsolete, so that's coming. You can
so
buy
those are
those
the titles
at Indie Planet.
At Indie Planet. Okay, we can get those at Indie Planet. We're coming to the close of the show, and I just want to thank Aaron for his patience with us as we watched you and answering all our questions. And I found it really helpful and interesting. I hope everyone did. As we close out, we like to say the same thing every week, and a lot of us say, "Make mine Silverline." We'll see you next week.
Hi, I'm Greg Horn. Make mine Silverline.